Now, a small French military contingent has arrived in Greenland's capital, Nuuk, following European states' deployment in a reconnaissance mission. The limited deployment involving Germany, Sweden, Norway, Finland, the Netherlands, and the UK comes as United States President Donald Trump continues to press his claim to the Arctic island. French President Emmanuel Macron said the initial contingent will be reinforced soon with land, air, and sea assets. However, senior diplomat Olivier Deavaux says the mission is sending a strong signal, which is a political signal. Meanwhile, President Trump doubled down on his bid to bring Greenland under U.S. control. Let's speak more on this as we bring in international law expert Livingstone Witchy. He joins me on Word Now for this development. He joins me virtually. Good to have you join us, Livingstone.
Thanks for having me.
So, from what we hear now, several European NATO countries are deploying small numbers of military personnel to Greenland to participate in joint exercises with Denmark. This is how this is framed. But we understand that the command or the drill is not under NATO command, as it were, but under the Copenhagen command. I mean, this show of solidarity with Denmark, will it deter President Trump in any way?
If you listen to the rhetoric from President Donald Trump, he's not doubling down at all. He's proceeding with his insistence on acquiring Greenland either peacefully or forcibly. The White House spokesperson has made it very clear that the deployment of minimal troops from those nations will not in any way deter Donald Trump. I think this is given the reasons behind his desire to acquire that particular territory, which is tied to certain historical factors. But again, I think Donald Trump, from his antecedent in Venezuela and his push in Iran, should not be undermined or be taken for granted in this particular indication. I understand a CNN report has said that his decision to acquire Greenland is informed by his obsession with the real estate arrangement. But the point is that being a real estate person is not really the reason behind Donald Trump's push, because I don't think it's anything personal. But this push should not be treated with a flip of the finger. It is something Donald Trump is going all out to enforce. And I think the affected nations, particularly Greenland and its allies, should now begin to put on the table every measure that may be required to somehow, in quotes, appease Donald Trump. Because
I will get to that in just a moment, how far this could go. But I wanted to stay on the deployment of troops. Just speak to the symbolism of this. Does it seem like Europe is saying, look, we will stand with Denmark no matter what?
You know, the NATO is Greenland is a semi-autonomous territory. It's not a fully independent entity, as it were. Neither is it also a member of NATO. It's just a signatory to the alliance within its neighbor around that particular region. So I think what has happened is that those nations that have deployed are showing some form of solidarity, because Greenland does not militarily have its own autonomy for deployment. So they are showing some element of presence to give Greenland some protection. But that is not also sufficient to, as it were, determine or to guarantee the stance of Greenland in this push for Donald Trump's acquisition. So that's all that can happen, just those minimal deployments. But
what do you mean when you say it is not enough? What do you mean when you say it's not enough to push for the stance of Greenland? Greenland is, while it is semi-autonomous, it is a territory that belongs to Denmark, and Denmark is a member of NATO.
No, you understand that the plane of international politics and international relations is expanding very wide. The definition is changing. The trend is changing. It's no longer international politics and relations or sovereignty on papers. It is now coming to the point of interest and the weaponization of that interest against states which may seem to be a threat. Like Venezuela, for instance, was seen as the U.S., particularly the extant regime of Nicolas Maduro. And in this case, America is saying that Greenland occupies a territory that raises some form of, significant concern, where it has said, if we don't acquire, Russia or China will acquire. So China has not come out to deny that we will not acquire, neither has Russia denied. But it is said that the position of Greenland currently serves as a security threat to the U.S. So the U.S. is now overpowering and overreaching itself against all international protocols to assert its sovereignty and its security interest, no matter whose ox is gored. So that's why I said the interpretation and the meaning given to sovereignty and international relations is expanding in the modern times. As such, it is not sufficient for those minimal deployments to guarantee. It doesn't matter whether Greenland is under Denmark. The question now is, does NATO or Denmark have the capacity to contain Trump in this drive of its current interest? The answer is yet to be deciphered in the coming days.
And I will get to that, because you're making really very interesting points. Because again, you mentioned NATO. NATO is built on the principle that an attack on one member is considered, as an attack on all of them. And both countries, whether it's Denmark or US, are members of NATO. And I'm wondering, that's what really makes this extraordinary. And I'm wondering if you think that this will go beyond a diplomatic conflict to becoming a military conflict, and what that would mean in general for NATO.
The point is that it stands the chance of going beyond a diplomatic conflict, because America has made it clear. America has brought the question of security around the circle to say that Greenland's position makes America vulnerable to missile attacks. And when you raise the issue of security around your argument, you begin to justify your military engagement. And at this point, it's no longer a question of whether you are under Denmark or NATO. Membership of a nation does not automatically quantify its sophistication. So it has come to the point where international relations is about sophistication and the measure of capacity to either resist, contain, or to put up some arsenals to protect yourself. So it is important that Greenland should not just sit back and say nothing will happen or call the shots. For you to call the shots with the current American regime, you must put all the cards on the table to negotiate strongly, and where concessions are necessary. This is not a question of whether America is right or wrong. We are looking at the contemporary definition and meaning given to diplomatic engagements as at today, where an America will go into Venezuela and pick up a president. China only issued a statement and it ended at that. Russia issued a statement and it ended at that. So it is a plane where the big boys and the big brothers are already conducting themselves to drive their interest. And remember the current American immigration policies. So they are strongly, as it were, scrutinizing nations, including neighbors and those who should come into America, or those whose neighborliness tend to affect America's interests, irrespective of whatever extant alliances or protocols or subscription to certain treaties that bind them.
And we can almost predict how far President Trump will go, but in terms of Europe's defense of Greenland, how far do you think they would go? And do they stand a chance against President Trump?
Now, the point is that as at today, every nation can defend or give support to a neighboring nation to the extent that it is already able to protect itself. Because when you talk about a injury to one being an injury to all, as it applies to the mantra of NATO, Greenland is said to be about 7 times bigger than Germany or thereabouts. Now, the question is, those neighbors to Greenland, what is their interest? How does protecting Greenland advance their own interest? What is their relationship with the United States? A lot of facts will be put on the table, but I don't see a situation where these countries will now sabotage or expose their own interests to all manner of vulnerabilities in trying to protect Greenland if the protection they give to Greenland does not, by extension, drive their own interest, or if it goes to establish a destruction of their relationship with the United States. That's the point. So it's a question of self-play. What's in it for me as a nation state, irrespective of sovereignty, irrespective of protecting alliance protocols between us and Greenland, but what's in it for me? Does it advance my relationship with the US, or does it isolate me? Because we are in an era of a level of international isolationism, and that's where we are headed. But that is to the extent that we begin to rethink international politics, international relations, because America is putting security on the table. So let's now know, between America, Russia, and China, whose interest is at play here, or whose security is at risk here. If it's that of America, America will go all out. But it is not to say America has become untouchable, but to say that the ante should be upped by NATO and its allies to engage objectively with America to reach a point of compromise. Because I believe there must always be. Ukraine-Russia situation didn't look like there could be a point of compromise. But today we are seeing that they're already considering concessions so that peace can reign.
I mean, it's just, I wonder if there is a point of compromise. President Trump wants the island. It looks like that's all he wants. But we'll continue to follow that development. Always a pleasure to have you on. International law expert, Livingstone Witchy.
Thank you.